Hello, fellow fans of the book Maze by Christopher Manson. This is my 9th commentary clip on this book that I've had a love-hate relationship with now for a few decades. In the earlier clips, I talked about what this book is all about, what we know about it, and what sort of things fans like myself are exploring. I did that without giving away any spoilers at first. I said that I, like a lot of obsessive fans of the book, had already solved things like the shortest path through a lot of trial and error, and now we're trying to speculate what clues the author may have intended in order to solve each room. And as fun as it is to let your speculation and imagination run away with you, I think there are ways to be a little more realistic about trying to figure out what the author may have intended as far as clues go. And I offered some guidelines in one of my previous clips about all that. So anyway, before I continue, if you've been enjoying these clips of mine, please stop and give this video a like, because that will help me out. And thank you to those of you who do take a moment to give these clips a like, and I'm glad you're enjoying them. So even though fans like myself have already figured out the shortest path from the entrance to the center and back, I would argue that every room in Maze is interesting in some way or another. Different fans also have their own personal favorite rooms for one reason or another. And in this clip, I'm just going to talk about one of my favorite rooms, which is Room 18. Now, there isn't much dialogue to Room 18, so let me just read it for you in full. So the protagonists navigating the maze end up in this room, and the dialogue says, quote, "A much warmer room. Shadows danced across the floor to the fire's music. Then somebody says, 'Someone's lost his hat.' The tour guide then asks, 'Are you sure it's the hat that is lost?' I asked reasonably enough. No one would answer me. Ducking behind a curtain and hurrying down a passageway, we came out in..." And that is where the dialogue ends. So this particular room is one of the loop rooms. I talked before about the classification of rooms as loop rooms, path rooms, and trap rooms and their differences. In this case, you want to get out of the loop and make your way back to room number 1, and the best door to take in this particular case is the door to room 13, the one on the left. So out of the two choices you have here, room 3 or room 13, you should take the exit to room 13. Going to room 3 just gets you deeper into the loop of the maze. And once again, we are reverse engineering stuff here, as I keep saying. So instead of reading clues and arriving at the correct answer of 13, I already know through trial and error and mapping that room 13 is the correct choice. So the question now becomes, what clues would indicate that we should take the exit to room 13 and not the exit to room 3? All right, there are several objects in this room. There's obviously a giant fireplace with a face, and in front of that is a top hat. Then we see 2 chairs. There's some split wood by the fireplace. There's a weird dragon of sorts above the fireplace on the upper left. There is a bowling pin in front of the exit to 13. And we see musical notes over the 2 exits. I'd like to mostly share my thoughts on the musical notes. I am a musician, and I think that's one of the reasons why I like this particular room. There are not only the notes, but also some musical references in the text, as I just read. And like a lot of fans of Maze, I have my own interpretations on some of these elements. Unfortunately, I have seen a lot of proposed interpretations that are just factually wrong from people who don't seem to know much about music theory. And I've also read some guesses about clues that I think are really far-fetched. But I have also read some ideas that seem very plausible to me as clues, so I'm going to address all of those in this clip. Okay, so for you non-musicians out there, or you hobbyists out there who own a musical instrument but know next to nothing about music theory or reading music, let me try giving you a crash course right now in reading sheet music. Now, to all of you fellow music nerds out there who understand all this stuff, just bear with me or fast forward. I'm going to be doing some oversimplification here as a disclaimer, just to teach the important stuff to the non-musician crowd. So spare me the comments of like, well, you could do this instead, Bill. Right. All right, let's get started. Music. What is music? Well, music is made up of musical notes. La 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 la. The two most important properties of musical notes, so far as we're concerned here, are pitch and duration. Pitch is the highness or lowness of a note. I'm not talking about volume or dynamics, which refer to the loudness or softness of a note. I'm referring to pitch. Some notes are high in pitch, some notes are low in pitch. So that's pitch, the lowness or highness of a note. And the other property I mentioned of a musical note is duration. The duration is simply how long we play a given note. So some notes are played in short duration, la 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 la. Some notes are played in longer duration, la 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 da 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 da. We can talk about all other sorts of properties of notes like timbre or the speed of the song itself, which is called the tempo or key transposition, and all of that other sort of crap. But when you get right down to it, so far as we are concerned in this discussion about Room 18, music is made up of musical notes, and what makes one song you can sing sound different than another you can sing is the notes, what the pitches are of those notes, and how long you hold each one for. Now, to write a song out in sheet music, or staff notation as it's also called, you essentially write each note of your song in such a way to describe what the pitch is and what the duration is. All the notes we use in music have names. We use the alphabet letters A through G for the different note names. Some notes use variations of these names called accidentals, so you may have heard things like B flat or C sharp, but let's not concern ourselves with those just yet. The notes which correspond to the white keys on a piano, the ones you can play there, those are called the natural notes, and they're just named after the letters of the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then it repeats once you get to that, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, as you go up the white keys from low to high in pitch. All right, now when we want to write down music, we take those notes and we write them on a staff. A staff is just 5 horizontal lines. That's all a music staff is. And those 5 lines make 4 spaces in between. And the symbol you see here on the lower left of the page, on the left end of the staff, is called a clef. And this particular clef is called a treble clef or a G clef. And all that means is that the lines and spaces correspond to these particular notes that you see written out here. So if you look on the very bottom left end, we write an extra line below the staff for the note C. So when we go up above or below the staff, we write extra lines and spaces. And then we read the notes from left to right, just as you'd read written words from left to right. And notice we go up to the next space, then up to the next line, then up to the next space, and so on. So if we're writing these notes ascending, increasing in pitch, the space above C is for the note D. The line above D, the bottom line of the staff, is the note E. So anytime we place a note on that bottom line of the staff, it means we're going to play the note E. Then the space above that is the note F, and then a G, and so on. Line, space, line, space, line, space. The treble clef is also called the G clef because if you look at the inner curly part of that symbol on the left, it curls around the second line from the bottom, which is the line for the note G. Okay, so that was the treble clef. For some musical instruments, though, the notes are just naturally lower, and it's easier to write the notes it makes in a different way. And this is where we get to the bass clef. So this symbol, which looks kind of like the top half of a question mark with 2 dots, that's called a bass clef. And all the same principles still apply. The only difference is this symbol means the lines and spaces that follow it are used this way. The C comes in the second space from the bottom, then there's a line above that, the middle line, that's D, space above that is E, and so on. So again, the bass clef is usually used for lower pitched instruments like the bass violin or bass guitar or the tuba, the trombone as well. So when we write music for piano, we actually use both staffs, the bass clef for what the left hand does and treble clef staff for the notes of what the right hand is playing. So a pianist has to read both staffs at the same time to read which notes to play with either hand. Now, as I said earlier, notes have both pitch and duration. So if a note's pitch is determined by which line or space you write it on, how do you write duration? How do you write how long to play a given note for before jumping on to the next note? Well, that's where things like stems and flags come in. If you've seen sheet music before, you've probably noticed that the notes don't usually look all like, round ovals like this. They usually have sticks and flags coming off of them or other sorts of symbols. Basically, those are the sorts of things that indicate duration of the notes, and that's really all that is. So, this concludes the crash course in sheet music reading, because you don't really need to know much beyond that as far as this room is concerned, I don't think. Okay. So, now that we have some idea of how to read sheet music, let's look at these notes over the two doors. On the left, we see a bass clef to the left of the notes over door 13, so that implies we should read those notes in the bass clef. And if you compare these notes to the diagram I just showed you on the previous slide, you'll see that these two notes over door 13 are, from left to right, the note C and the note A. And as many fans have noticed, C and A are the third and first letters of the alphabet, and this is the door to 13. 1-3, AC. 13. Interesting. Now let's look at the second door. We have a treble clef, which implies the notes over the next door are to be read in the treble clef, that slide from 2 slides ago. The notes over the second door, you'll notice, are stacked on top of each other. Now, when you read sheet music, you read notes from left to right, just as you read words on a page from left to right, and you play them one after another. So when you see notes stacked on top of each other like that, this means you play those notes at the same time. So playing multiple musical notes simultaneously is called playing a chord. The notes of this particular chord are, reading them from the bottom up, that one on the very bottom line is E, and then up to the next line is G, and then up from there to the space is C, and then at the top space you get another E. Now, in music theory, this particular chord has a name. We could call this a C major chord. A C major chord is a chord that has only the notes C, E, and G in it in some combination, all at least once, but if some are repeating, that's okay. If you want to get technical, a C chord where the E is the lowest note is more specifically called a C inverted chord, or a C of the first inversion. In any case, there are multiple ways to write a symbol for this particular chord. The simplest way is to just write the letter C. Now, if you were writing a set of chords for musicians to follow by writing the chord names, and the musician saw the letter C, that musician would know which chord you mean. So, in the context of chord notation, writing the letter C by itself means not necessarily just the single note C, but a C major chord, the notes C, E, and G in some combination. But notice again that C is the third letter of the alphabet, and the C chord is over the exit to room 3. Now, it seems to me that this is all too good to be coincidental, the 1 and the 3 matching up to the notes for both doors in some way. However, what this means in the greater scheme of things trying to select the correct door is still a mystery to me, I got to admit. Okay. Now, before I get into some of my own hunches about the clues in room 18, I'd like to go over some suggestions I've read or I've heard about with this room, whether it was from the website intotheabyss.net or from the Mazecast podcast. If you go to the comments section of Into the Abyss and you go to the room 18 comments, you'll find tons and tons of comments. Some of the answers people propose sound plausible to me, and we'll certainly get to some of those. Some, I'm sorry, I gotta say, are just demonstrably wrong because the person making it was kind of off on their music theory, or maybe they counted something wrong. And then I read some other connections that are some of those, rabbit hole connections where you're just speculating and you're going so far off trying to find things. It's like, oh, okay, what you're proposing here is very unlikely an intended clue from the author. And I can't really take it seriously. Now, remember I said way back in an earlier clip that the book tells us there are any number of clues to find the correct door in a given room. So my aim here isn't to find one definitive clue that tells us to take door 13. I just want to try to find what makes sense and what doesn't as best as I can, and also throw out some of my own ideas. So, first of all, bullet point number 1 here. The word bass, as it's used in music, is spelled B-A-S-S, not B-A-S-E. One of the top-rated answers for room 18 on Into the Abyss has it misspelled. And as a bass player, it's just a personal pet peeve. I hate seeing that. So now that I've gotten that off of my chest, let's continue. I've seen people argue, oh, well, the bass clef notes are A and C, which is 1 and 3, but the other notes are E, G, C, E, which is nothing, and probably sounds like a mess. So therefore, go with the first door. Well, as I already pointed out, no, the second group of notes, the one that's over the exit to 3, is a C chord, and you would abbreviate that with the letter C. So that does correspond with number 3 as well, so we can ditch this kind of rationalization. Third, I heard another person say the illuminated chair is in front of the correct door. Okay, true, but so what? Room number 1 has some sunlight on doors, and they're the wrong doors, so I don't know what this really definitively tells us here. I saw somebody else say, hey, when you turn the chair sideways, and you can see a picture here I put on the bottom of the slide. When you turn it sideways, it looks like an X and 3 lines, so that's a Roman numeral 13, and that's a clue to take the exit of 13. Okay, I'm not really buying it. Now, another person said, well, the dialogue says that the shadows danced across the floor to the fire's music. Floor music? Fire's music? F's music? Maybe they take the F clef music door, which is the bass clef? Okay, that seems a little more plausible to me. A lot more plausible, actually. Likewise, the room is described as a warmer room, and the correct door is closer to the fire. So there is the expression, you're getting warmer, which means you're getting closer to the correct thing. And we know the author, Manson, uses puns, so I don't think it's a far-fetched answer. That very well might be an intended clue. Curiously enough, if we go to door 3, there's a furnace in that room in the corner next to the door that brings us back here to room 18, and that's the door we're supposed to take from room 3. So maybe there is something to that. The whole, warmer analogy. Now, just to quickly continue with other things I've heard, somebody said that if you take the bass clef and the treble clef, otherwise known as the F clef and the G clef, F and G are letters corresponding to numbers 6 and 7 in the alphabet. 6 plus 7 equals 13. Okay. I heard another person claim that the notes in the bass clef make a typical ding-dong sound heard in a doorbell. This is incorrect, though. The notes C sharp and A would give you that, but not C and A. Now, I'll be playing some of these notes for you later on. Now, one particular clue that I see a lot of people swear by is that the top hat looks like the letter O, or the fireplace looks like it's saying O, and there was a pin by the curtain, and O, pin, sounds like open, which means take the open curtain. I personally do not buy this idea at all. I think it's way too much of a stretch. That's my opinion on this. On the other hand, somebody pointed out that in this dialogue, the opening paragraph has 13 words, the middle sentence has 13 words, and the last sentence has 13 words. It alternates 13, 5, 13, 5, 13. We know that there are other examples in the book where a number of letters in a phrase matches the correct door number to take in that room. So maybe this is another possibility. So far, I haven't said much of anything about the fireplace or the dragon above it. Somebody said the eyes of the dragon are vertical, like the dots on that bass clef, and the head turns in that kind of bass clef way, too, kind of like the top half of a question mark. Interesting. I also heard somebody throw out the simple idea, hey, the narrator says they ducked behind a curtain. A curtain, ducked behind AC. So ducked behind the notes AC? Well, I think that seems to match, although it does beg the question why the notes would be written CA and not in the order AC. And finally, one other suggestion I've seen is that there is a reference here to music in the room and there are chairs. So this brings to mind the game of musical chairs. There's already a chutes and ladders room, so why not a musical chairs room? If you have 2 chairs, which is what we had in the room, then that means there are 3 people playing, circling around the chairs till the music stops. Some people have said 3 people plus a 10-pin bowling pin gives you 3 plus 10, or 13. Now, there were many other weird theories I've seen, but in these last 2 slides, well, it gives you an idea of a lot of what I've read and what I've heard. So let's move on to some personal guesses of my own, which I personally have not heard anybody else propose. So if we take a closer look at this chair and think about the musical theme we have going on, well, I personally think the chair kind of resembles this note you see I have drawn next to it on the left. This note with the 3 flags on the end is known as the 32nd note. And just to oversimplify what this means in layman's terms, it's a very, very quick note. Very, very short duration. If you had a piece of music that was being played really, really fast, or had notes that were extremely short in duration, you would see notes like this probably being written. So what does this mean? Well, the text does say they ducked and hurried. So maybe, perhaps a quick escape calls for a quick note. Door 13 is also the door with the bowling pin in front of it, and we know from the other rooms of the maze that the author sometimes likes to make words out of rearranging letters. So if we have a pin under the notes AC, that gives us PINAC, which rearranged to panic, so that reinforces the quickness theory. I kept trying to play around with anagrams of the other objects in the room, like the hat and stuff, and I just really couldn't find any that seemed meaningful. I did notice curtain and pin rearranged to the phrase panic I turn, but that's probably one of those far-fetched answers, kind of going deep. I should try to get a little more simple. All right, now what about the square shape of the seat? Or, as it looks from our perspective, like a diamond shape. Well, in music, when you write a note with a diamond note head instead of a round note head, that usually denotes a what's called a pinch harmonic. To try to explain this in layman's terms, this is a technique where you touch a string on a stringed instrument very, very lightly without pressing completely down on it, and you pluck the string. And if you do this correctly, you'll get a high-pitched noise sounding something like a tuning fork. You may have heard guitar players use this to tune their strings relative to each other. Now, pin and chair does give us pinch air, but once again, maybe I'm just speculating here. I'm not sure what this tells us. The notes above the doors, in any case, aren't written in this style at all anyway. They're written with the regular solid-filled note head. I did read somebody say that it looks like these 2 chairs are notes being sung by the fireplace itself. They're sort of coming out of its mouth. Are there any other connections between a chair and music? Well, you can rest in a chair. In music, the term rest refers to the parts of music where you're not playing anything. You're being silent, because silence, has durations as well. It's the spaces of silence in between the notes that you play. Regardless, a 30-second rest in music would not be written like a note. It would be written like a rest, and this other symbol in the middle and the bottom is what a 30-second rest would look like, for what it's worth. All right, so those are some thoughts I had about the chair. Let me now get to some more thoughts I had about room 18. Now, I am still not sure what to make of the number combination. like I said, the notes A and C over the 13 exit and the C chord over the 3 exit, it seems to match up, with A equals 1, C equals 3. But once again, I don't know what we're supposed to make of this. Also, in the dialogue, there's a joke about the lost top hat. And people have wondered, is it more than a joke? They repeat hat a number of times, so is there something to be said about the hat as a clue? Or about the word hat? I don't know. I know it's hat out of the 3 letters. One of them is A, and the notes above 13 is the only A note. I don't know. Now, up until now, I've talked a lot about these musical notes. So what do they sound like? Well, let's give it a try. Rather than trying to hook up my piano keyboard, I'm going to play the notes for you on my ukulele. So give me a moment here. All right. I know that purists will argue that the bass notes should be heard an octave down and that the C chord I'm going to play right now isn't the true inverted C chord, but most of you out there with ears, just trust me, what you're about to hear is a close enough approximation. So first, let's hear the bass notes, the notes A and C over the door sound something like this. Actually, it's the same duration of both, so. If I raise the C up to a C sharp, that does sound like a doorbell, so that doesn't really sound like a doorbell, but that sounds a little closer to an actual doorbell sound. But once again, is not what we have written there. What we have written there is CA. And now for the notes played above the second door, that is a C chord. Let me play that for you. So, sounds something like that, or maybe more. So, pretty stereotypically pleasing chord. If you were to play this on a piano with the left hand on the bass notes and the right hand on the treble notes, well, you might hear something like this. Okay. Now, is this a well-known musical piece? Not that I know of, but anyway, that's what they sound like for anybody out there wondering. As I mentioned a while back in another clip, there was a maze CD-ROM game created in the 1990s, and that's where I got these colorized photos of the rooms from. So they are not colorized in the book, but also in the game, just to talk about more about Room 18, what is it like in the game? Well, in the game in general, certain items in the room become animated when you click on them. And as I said in a previous clip, they say that the items are important, but honestly, I don't know if they consulted with the author at all and made that the case, or if they decided to just animate random items just because they could. So in any case, on the CD-ROM game, the flames of the fire here are animated. They move. If you click on the face of the fireplace, the eyes blink, and there's a sound that sounds to me kind of like a rock scraping against rock sound. And also on the CD-ROM game, there are 2 other clickable things I found in this room, and those are the notes above the door. In the game, if you click on the bass notes, you hear just a low note. If you click on the treble notes, you hear a woman singing, ah. So in each case, it's a single note that's heard. It's not the actual notes there that you hear when you click on them. The pitch of the note in the game, oddly enough, is the note C sharp, which isn't in either piece of music. Go figure. So again, what this tells us, I don't know. Does it mean the fireplace eyes and the notes over the doors are the important things we need for the clues? Who knows? For the rest of this clip, though, I want to talk about 2 other ideas that may be clues to this room. Maybe. The first of these is a possible connection to room 35, and the other is what I believe may be a connection between room 18 and room 17. So as I said way back in one of my first clips, we're told in the book's introduction that some clues may refer to a specific door in a single room, but I pointed out that this doesn't rule out the possibility that a clue for a particular room might be found in another room. So let's look at room 35. Room 35 is one of two rooms of the maze that has only one exit. This is not a trap room, it's a loop room, as is room 18. So there is some way to find your way out of the loop and back to room 1 from here. In room 35, one of the things we see is a broken down couch. Actually, in the dialogue, we're told somebody sits down on the couch and then it breaks. Now, somebody else, I can't take credit for this one particular part, but somebody else once noticed that if you look at the arm of the couch on the left, you see a bass clef written into it. I've glanced at this picture since the 1990s, and of course, like many, I just, my eyes glazed over it. I just assumed that that's just a fold in the curve of the handle. But if you zoom in and especially compare that to the other arm of the couch, this one really does look like a bass clef. They're not really mirror images of each other. I've heard some people argue that the suit hanging on the wall has a hanger, and the hanger is shaped like a bass clef too, but it seems like a bit of a stretch. So let's get back to the couch. Now, notice that the broken shape of the couch sort of resembles the two beamed notes of the bass clef notes we saw in room 18. It's kind of that same shape sloping down. And we also see in the middle of room 35, there was a tripod or a totem of sorts pointing left. So maybe that's a clue to take the left door in room 18, under the bass notes in room 18. I also just noticed now that there are only two cushions on the couch. The other is in the doorway. So is that maybe another connection to the two chairs of room 18, 2 seats, 2 cushions? I don't know. But there's another connection I'd like to propose. In music, the notes of a major scale are named do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, or descending do, ti, la, so, fa, mi, re, do. Now notice in the middle, you get so, fa. Sofa. It's a couch, a sofa. Now, those don't actually correspond to the C and A notes written over the door in room 18. If they were the notes in the key of C, we would name them do and la, which is an anagram for load, but getting ahead of myself here. So fa, well, they're still descending notes, and it's kind of well known, in music terminology. And what we got on the bass clef notes in room 18 are descending notes, notes going down, not a chord. And there's one final thing I'd like to share here, which I have never ever seen anybody else propose. If you have the physical book, the dialogue pages are on the left, the pictures of the rooms are on the right. And if you look at 18 as it looks in the book without the coloring, you do see a lot of white space on the floor, because that's illuminated by the go back here. That's illuminated by the fireplace, and it's colored purple here in the short, but that's all white in the actual physical book. Now, if we turn back to room 17, which is just on the previous page, that's this room, and we look above this door on the left, you see the Y-O-U-R, and then that unnumbered door has this face. The face kind of sort of looks like the one of the fireplace, I think, with the open mouth with no bottom there and the stone around it. Also on the far right side, there's a pair of suns on the right-hand side over that other exit. Well, with the suns and the fireplace in mind, what if we were to physically take our book with the pages of 17 and 18 against each other and hold it up to a fire? If we were going to hold it up to a fire, the book is going to burn, of course, so let's not do that. But, what if we were to hold it up to a light, like hold it up to a window or something? Well, if we take an image of room 17 and superimpose that on the room 18, we can get some kind of idea of what we would see. So this is what we see. If we look at this room from left to right, the mouth of the fireplace in room 18 almost perfectly matches over the exit in room 17 to room 6. Room 6 is one of the trap rooms. And in the middle of the room, we see that the chair pointing to the glorious room 45 is here. That is also where the door for 13 is in room 18, which is the door we're supposed to take. It's interesting how that lines up. And finally, the doors for 3 and 33 overlap on the right-hand side. And those are both loop rooms. Now, maybe this is all just a coincidence. Maybe Manson drew almost all of these rooms in some way so as to be evenly spaced. And, the exits just happen to line up like that. I don't know. I think with the face in room 17, though, plus the fire, it does seem like a possible clue to me. But this made me wonder if there are any other pairs of rooms like this in Maze. Let's look at 15, for example. Over on the left, there's a panel with a bird, a cloud, a moon, and a lightning bolt. People have suggested that these all refer to things in the sky, and therefore we're supposed to look up at the ceiling, where the grids sort of make a pattern like letter H's, and H is needed here in solving the riddle of the maze. Okay, but maybe it's also an indication to illuminate the page, like I just did with room 17 and 18. So the room before 15 in the book is room 14, of course. And if we do this same trick where we take the pages of room 14 and 15 together, hold it up to the light, we get this. Notice the target from room 14 seems to line up perfectly with the door in room 15 that goes to room 37, and that is, in fact, the correct door to take from room 15 on the shortest path. So that all concludes my thoughts on room 18 and my picture see-through theory. Like I said, I've seen many different speculations about room 18, some of which I think are good or interesting, some of which I don't buy, and some that I think are just flat out wrong when it comes to music theory, and I felt the need to correct. If you have any further ideas on room 18 that you didn't hear me cover in this clip, or you found something you think I got wrong and you need to correct me, or if there's an entirely different room you want to see me talk about, well, let me know in the comments. And please give this clip a like on YouTube if you have not yet. And we'll see you next time. Thank you for listening.